Colorado looked horrendous in their loss against Stanford, and Deion Sanders went as far to call them pathetic.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Board. Today's episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. This is, like I said, Locked On Buffs, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts, right here every single day. Let's dive right in. Colorado, we all know what happened. They come into the Stanford game as, I believe, it was 13-point favorites. They kind of slaughter them in the first half. It's 29-0. Everybody's feeling good. Colorado looks like they're about to win their second straight game, win their fifth game of the season, meaning they only have to win one more to make a bowl game, and they have a tough stretch coming up. So when I say they only have to win one more after what would have been that win, you'll probably be like, yeah, that would have been much more manageable than what they have now. But now they lose the game. They drop to 4-3, and they have a tough matchup coming up. And as you can imagine, Coach Prime was furious, about as furious as I've seen him in terms of like what's on the well-off media stuff. And he spoke to the team after the game and said that what they did was pathetic. And I'm just going to show you guys the video here so that way you could see what the coach had to say, because it is obviously not pretty. So let's dive right in.
Be taken care of. You're not going to be looked after. You're not going to have the luxuries of all this. And you're going to have to go out there and get it on your own and work your butt off. Because ain't nobody going to give you nothing. I don't understand. I don't think you understand what this world consists of. What we just did today was pathetic. All the love that you received, all the love that we received, you getting ready to see that flip. And don't get beside yourself on social media and start responding to the foolishness, because they're right. They're right. And we're practicing tomorrow. God bless.
Yeah, so tough scenes. It's never good when a coach says we're practicing tomorrow, because usually the next day is like an off day. But what do we learn from that speech? One, he and it's at the beginning of the speech, and obviously I didn't have time to put the whole however many clips it is in the video in my show, because it's probably like a 10-minute clip. But over the past week or so, I've noticed in the well-off media videos that there's been an emphasis on guys feeling entitled. Coach Prime has focused on life after football. He's talked to guys, I think it was last week, he was like, what is your plan? And realistically, a lot of these players think they're all going pro. Every college athlete, let me just put it this way, every college athlete thinks they're going to be a professional athlete, or for the most part, 99.9% of them. But in realistically, 1% to 2% go pro. So for every 85 players, there's like 2 or 3 that are going pro from a team. So, and some teams will have exceptions. Obviously, there's going to be teams like this Colorado team has a few pros on it. Shadur, Travis, maybe Shiloh, some of Jimmy Horn, Xavier Weaver. Those guys will get pro nods. I don't doubt that. But the rest of the guys, like there's a whole, even if say Colorado has 10 players drafted, that is 75 other scholarship players who are not going pro. That's what the numbers work out to. And I think he's been focusing on this team is feeling a big sense of entitlement. I think they kind of let the wins and let the social media, let the media attention get to them. Stephen A. Smith said that today too, when he was talking about Deion Sanders and his social media controversy, that they're letting the attention get to them, and it kind of has derailed what they were planning to do, what they're hoping to do. And now their season's about to get real tough. And if they continue to lose games, it's going to get even tougher, because obviously social media and the media, they're a fearless group. They love you when you succeed, and they love you even more when you fail, because obviously you get to write about it. It's more content. It's all of the above. And so I think he's right that it is a pathetic showing, and it seems harsh. I won't lie to you. It does seem harsh, but when you look at the tale of two halves. And I think this has a lot to do with the players. I think this has a lot to do with the coaching. And I think it has a lot to do with where the overall program is right now. So the first half of, we'll go offense first. Colorado put up, let's see, 200 and let me see if that's right. That doesn't sound right. Oh, excuse me. They put up 167 yards in the first quarter, plus 157. They put up nearly 330 yards of offense in the first half, averaging 9.5 yards per play. They were 3 for 4 on third down conversions, and they had 8 penalties, which I mean, not great. But then you go to the second half, and they only mustered up 60 plus 109. They only mustered up 169 yards of offense. They in the third quarter they were only averaging 2.3 yards of offense, and they had 9 penalties, which included things such as Travis Hunter pushing a receiver, on what would have been like 4th and 23, and ended up giving Stanford an automatic first down. They had holding penalties. They had, like I said after my live recap, don't know what the record is for illegal substitutions, but they had 4 or 5 of them. Like, it was ridiculous. I had never seen so many players, so many instances of like guys not knowing who's supposed to be on the field at the same time. And again, that's on the coaches, that's on the players, that's on everybody involved. And then you flip to, that's how they did on offense. So there was a dramatic drop off. Stanford in the first half had 115 yards of total offense. They had 205 yards of offense alone in the third quarter. And then plus you add the 161 they had in the fourth. They had 366 yards of offense in the second half. They averaged almost 16 yards per play in the third quarter. They had 0 penalties. They were playing clean football in the third quarter. 2 for 2 on third downs, 2 for 4 on third downs in the fourth quarter. So 4 for 6. And then obviously it goes into overtime, and Colorado they score, Stanford answers, and then Shedeur Sanders throws a pick. And I think there's a lot to be learned about this game for Colorado. I think it was a learning moment for the program. This program, I think there was a lot of flaws with this team, and we learned, and I myself included, I'll put this out there, I think we took too much weight from their first few games. Did they look great? Yes, they did. They looked the offense looked really good against TCU, Nebraska, and Colorado State. The defense looked meh to bad most of the time. They looked meh against Nebraska. They had some decent showings, but Colorado State kind of torched them. And I think we learned or didn't learn enough about this team early on. And so we had some unrealistic expectations for them. And now we're starting to see what their weaknesses are. They're undisciplined. They're the most penalized team in the country. They are on track for 118 penalties this year. School record is 116. So that's not great. Shedeur Sanders' offensive line is the worst offensive line in college football. They've given up the most sacks in college football. At least they've given up the most sacks in Power 5. In terms of the most sacks in college football, they currently lead the country because Old Dominion had a bye. So they've given up 35. Old Dominion's given up 33. And yeah, and the secondary they struggle against passing attacks. They struggle against the run. This team has a lot of flaws, and I think they were masked by huge performances by Shedeur Sanders, and I think they needed a big performance from him every single game, every single moment, and obviously that's just not possible. I think Shedeur Sanders, of all quarterbacks, could probably give you major moments every single game, but to expect him to carry them to victory every single week just wasn't sustainable. And I think it says more about the teams they beat than it says about this Colorado team. And I'm not trying to take away anything that they have accomplished. This team is way better than what they were a year ago. They're headed in the right direction. I think next year they should be very competitive in the Big 12. But right now, I'm focused on the now. And this team is struggling. They have major flaws. Obviously, their offense line is bad. Their defense line is bad. They don't get pressure on quarterbacks. They can't protect their quarterback. They can't establish the run game. And there's just so much going wrong. And Coach Prime is rightfully upset, and I don't know how to fix this, if there's an immediate fix, because obviously you need dogs on the offense line, you need dogs on the defense line, and realistically, there's going to be 3 or 4 guys out there that are like elite guys, and do those guys come to Colorado? I don't know. Like Bear Alexander from USC, for instance, the big thing for him was NIL. He went to USC because USC provides huge NIL. Jordan Birch from South Carolina went to Oregon. He went to play for Dan Lanning, who's one of the best coaches, defensive minds in college football. So it's hard to get these top transfers, these top offensive line transfers. Like, you're not going to get one of the best offensive linemen in the country on the transfer portal because those guys don't need to transfer. And so he has to kind of figure out who he could target, who he could bring in, and still boost his team up. But yeah, I think it's totally fair to say that was a pathetic showing. They kind of, I don't know if they thought they had the game won. I don't know if they thought maybe it was just like, whatever, we're fine now. But that was embarrassing, obviously, as one can imagine. And now they kind of have to deal with the repercussions of it. And as one can imagine, it is not looking too favorable for them on the social media world. So Colorado has a lot to learn from that loss, and they have a tough stretch coming up. By the way, this episode of Locked on Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsors over at Game Time. Buying tickets, it can be frustrating sometimes. You want to go to a big game and tickets are either their prices are through the roof, or you just can't find any. You shouldn't have to worry about that when you're buying tickets to your next big event, whether it's sports, music, comedy, theater, anything near you. Game Time has last minute killer deals, all in prices, with views from your seat, and the best prices guaranteed. They have last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. They're easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. Views from all seats in the venue, lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection. If you want to buy tickets to whatever prominent event near you and you want to take out all the guessing work of buying those tickets, do it with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege, which is LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your purchase. Download Game Time today. Create an account. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. This episode of Locked on Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsors over at Prize Picks. Sometimes we want to get in on the action, but we don't want to go all out. We don't want to put in these huge parlays. But with Prize Picks, you don't have to do that. It's the most fun I've had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. Testing my skills on Prize Picks this football season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you could turn up $10 into $250 with just a few taps. They have quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stats. Stat types are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100 off. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100 off. Go get in on that action. Go win you some money. Welcome back. We are talking about love for the game. Do they have it? Do they not? One of the biggest takeaways I had from Coach Prime after the game was his kind of, I guess, his bluntness about his team. I think he's been very blunt about this team throughout each and every week. He keeps on saying that there's improvements to be made. But like I said earlier, there's been a lot of in the well-off media videos, and I don't know if maybe they just didn't show it in the earlier videos, or if this has been a problem that they've had while they've been experiencing success, which is guys maybe are feeling like they're better than they are. Coach Prime after the game, and I wrote about this over at Athlon, he questioned his team's love for the game of football. He says, I want guys to love the game more than I do, and obviously you can't make them love the game, but this is his exact quote, because I think it's very telling about where this team is right now. He says, they got to make up in their mind, are they in love with this game or in like with it? I'm truly 100% in love with this game, with this thing. I just want people to match me. And so I think there's a lot to be, in those couple sentences, there's a lot to be learned about this team. I think the guys like the attention. They like the social media attention. They like the national attention. They like the clout that it brings. Do they like the work that they have to put in? Do they have the desire to win games? Some of these guys, they transfer to a Power 5 program. Are they just happy to be at a Power 5 program? Are they just happy to be playing for Deion Sanders? Are they just happy to be on national television every week? Maybe, but there's more to college football than that. They have to love the process. They have to love winning games, and they have to love putting in the work. And we've seen Coach Prime call out players for missing meetings. We've seen players, he even called them out for showing up right as, or one of the coaches, I think it was Charles Kelly or Sean Lewis. They called out guys for showing up right when meetings start, right when practice starts. They're not showing up earlier to get in extra work. They're not showing up to kind of set a precedent of like, I want to be here. This isn't like a last minute thing that I just have to do. This isn't just a means to an end. And I think this Colorado team is going through a tough learning curve. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I would say it's a bad thing for the players because they have more time to sit with this and they have more time to kind of get reprimanded, but they have a bye week now. So they have 2 weeks until their next game. And obviously, they have a lot of time to sit there and think about what happened. The coaches are going to hammer it in. I think the coaches are probably going to tighten up a little bit. I don't know if practices were getting a little too, I don't want to say Coach Prime practices have ever been nonchalant, but when you're winning or when there's success, you kind of get into this like rhythm of like, oh, we got this, everything's going to work out. And I wonder if the coaches are going to go a little harder on them now, which I expect them to. Because these are not statements that you want your head coach. You don't want your head coach to say that's pathetic. You don't want him questioning your love for the game. And you don't want him to say, because he also said he was truly disturbed by what they showed. You don't want to hear that 7 games into the season. Like, this is early season stuff. This is like losing culture stuff. Do you love the game? I'm disgusted with what I saw. That was pathetic. You guys gave up. That is early season losing culture talk. And this Colorado team, while the culture is better than what it was, we've heard people from around the program. We've heard players say it. We've heard Adam from 24/7, Brian Howell from Buff Zone. They talked about how it's a different culture, but it's still, these guys have a lot to learn about winning. They have a lot to learn about being a member of a winning team. They have a lot to learn about adjusting to roles and stuff. And so this is a tough environment for a team that I think just a month ago I said they could win 8 to 9 games. And now I think my preseason prediction of them winning 6 games is looking pretty scary. If I look at their schedule right now, I look at it and I see matchups against top 25 teams. I see they have 2 unranked matchups, and even those teams are both really good. So the rest of their schedule goes at number 25 UCLA, who has one of the best defenses in the country. They host Oregon State, who again, one of the better defenses in the country, dominant run game. That's not great for Colorado. Arizona, who just blew the brakes off of Washington State, who was a top 25 team with their backup quarterback. And it looks like he may take over as a starter. Washington State, they were a top 25 team. I think they got as high up to as number 16 in the country. Then they have Utah, number 14 in the country. Don't know what's going on with their injury situation, but I don't see a game on this remaining slate where I'm like, yeah, they should win that game. I think there's games like the UCLA game or the Arizona game where I'm like, they could win that game, but there's no guarantee wins on the schedule anymore. And so they're sitting at 4-3. There's a real possibility that, one, if they turn things around, they win a couple games, get to 6-3 or 6-4, and then they lose a couple, finish the season 6-6. Maybe things go right and they string together a win streak and go 7-5. Or realistically, there's a possibility that they lose out and they go 4-8. Like, that's how dangerous this schedule is, and that's how dangerous their issues that they're having right now are. This is the difference between a team being a winning team and a team being a sub 500 team. And obviously 4 wins is a success for Colorado because they were projected to get 3, but that's not what this team was looking like at the beginning of the year. And so I would say, while it is a success in terms of like what they're expected, I think the hype and attention that they were getting and just the overall vibe around the program was that they'd be better. So we'll just have to wait and see. When we come back, I'm going to tell you about what Colorado's biggest issues are. But first, this episode of Locked On Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsors over at Athletic Brewing. Athletic Brewing Company has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good, full flavor, and well-crafted, just like a full-strength beer. Their brews are great tasting and award-winning and beat out full-strength beers in global competitions. So they are fit for all times, and you can drink them anytime, anywhere, watching a big game, your kid's game, tackling a work or a workout. And if you want to get in on the Athletic Brewing Company's action, they have a perfect quiz that helps you find the best flavor for you. So if you want to get in on this delicious drink, go to athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near the beer aisle, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing, a company fit for all times. Welcome back. To conclude this episode, I'm going to talk about Colorado's issues. I'm going to talk about what I think. There's three main things that are preventing this team from winning games and kind of keeping them out of, I guess, that 8 to 9 win ratio contention, which I will admit I fully thought was a possibility, but it is no longer looking like a possibility anymore unless they go on a crazy streak. But this team's struggling. Biggest issue, they are big play dependent. No, let me change it. They are Shedeur Sanders making big plays dependent. There is no other support for Shedeur Sanders on offense. The run game is, I don't want to say useless, but it's pretty much useless. We talked about in this offseason, they have a deep running back room. They have Kavosi Smoke. They get Ultimate Caskell. They have Dylan Edwards. They have Anthony Hankerson, experienced guys, and they could just rotate whoever they want, and it's going to be great. And it's not. Their running backs are not getting into open space. Leads me to my next point. The offensive line, the trenches, they're just weak. They're getting pushed around, and it's not sustainable to win games. I think they were benefiting from other teams having offensive lines or defensive lines that weren't able to, or they're benefiting from other teams not being able to keep up with their offense. But when Shedeur Sanders gets pressured and teams kind of hone in on what they want to do and limit Shedeur Sanders, this offense has no other answer. It's literally, Shedeur, we need you to throw for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns every game. Otherwise, we have no answers. And that's not sustainable. I said it wasn't going to be sustainable. And now they have a tough stretch where teams are going to be able to keep up with them. Teams are going to have good defenses. And it's like, what do you turn to? And there's nothing to turn to because this offense is so reliant on Shedeur. Second thing, the trenches, which I kind of already mentioned. Offensive line, they can't block worth a lick. They're giving up the most sacks in the country. They can't establish running lanes. They probably need to replace the entire unit next year. Defensive line, they don't generate any pressure. They give up huge running lanes. And you just look at this unit and you're like, I thought this would be better. Like Derek McClendon, Shane Cokes, Jordan Dominic, whoever it may be. I thought these guys they had great individual talents. Saviel Smalls from Washington. I thought they had talented pieces that would come together, Bishop Thomas. And it's like, they don't. They just, for whatever reason, they get pushed around. I don't know if it's a strength and conditioning issue. I don't know if it's a mindset issue, but both of their offensive defense line get pushed around like they are a JV football team. And that seems harsh, but that needs to be a strength and it's a weakness. And it's one thing to have a mediocre offensive or defensive line, but for them to be a weakness is detrimental to a team. And then lastly, this is kind of what I would say there was their biggest issue in Stanford, but I think this could be an issue just in general. They take their foot off the gas pedal. When things get easy or when things look like it's over, they take their foot off the gas pedal. It's exactly what happened at Stanford. They released the video of Sean Lewis talking to the team at halftime. They were talking about getting the reserves in. Like the mentality was like, yeah, this game's handled. Like, it was more, okay. He was telling the players, do your jobs, play well, so that way we could get the reserves in. And so that it automatically instills a mindset of like, okay, we got this game won. We're just going to go out there for a couple drives, maybe score a touchdown or two, and then the backups are going to play. We're going to chill on the sidelines. And that's not what happened. It was a bad showing. This Colorado team, this Colorado program has been punched in the mouth. It has been a far fall from grace. Just a month ago, they were one of the most successful teams in college football. And now it's going to be a battle to finish at 500. And so this is not where Deion Sanders wanted this program to be, not where we thought this program would be. And it's just utterly disappointing. They have a lot of room to grow. And I don't know where this roster goes from here, if they maybe try out new guys on the offensive defensive line. But these next 2 weeks of practice are probably going to be hell for them. And there's probably going to be a lot of learning moments, a lot of teaching moments. But that's what college football is all about. And you can find out what I know and what I think every step of the way here on Locked On Buffs. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day and making me your first listen.